Okie dokie. It says that we're recording. So, if you want to join the discussion and just chime on in, feel free to do it. If you don't necessarily want to chime in, go ahead and mute. A little bit about myself. Name's Scott Brewster. I've been doing SharePoint for a very long time, and very long time ago, while I was still in the Army, I saw knowledge management as a course I could take through the University of Maryland. And I thought, knowledge management? That sounds interesting. I did a whole little class on epistemology when I first went to college. And I thought this would be kind of cool. And so BMGT 305, I still have my book right here. And so I've been doing KM for quite a while. And then several years back when I was with Booz Allen Hamilton, they sent a whole lot of us to the Knowledge Management Institute to get certified. So I am a certified knowledge manager. And then, what was it, a year and a half ago, no, 2.5 years ago, I saw that they had the Information Architect master class with the Knowledge Management Institute. So I did that one as well. So I just want to say I've been doing KM for quite a while. It's not just the wiki page that I've read, and I've gone forward with it. And it's hard to get a lot of clients on board with doing KM efforts because it looks like just a cost that's somewhat difficult to obtain metrics on what we're doing in order to see what are you getting the return on your investment. If I hire all these people to do KM, am I getting my money's worth? And it's important that we try to find ways to actually get those metrics, but there are intangibles where we can't exactly say how much money is getting lost in the process. So I'd like to give you a couple vignettes of where knowledge management would have worked very, very well. So at the Fort Leavenworth Army Center for Lessons Learned, there is a huge library regarding asymmetric warfare. It's where the Army War College is. So every Army officer that's going up in rank ends up going there, and they learn all kinds of stuff, and they all have theses to write, and they have done a lot of work on asymmetric warfare, especially post-Vietnam. Guess what no one read before we rolled into Iraq in 2002? What was it, 2002? Yeah, in spring of 2002. All that stuff. So we did not, do the up armoring of the Humvees on the bottom. We hadn't studied a whole lot on asymmetric warfare. People were still thinking about how do we fight the Soviets, even though the Soviet Union had, gone away 10 years prior. And so I'm just saying that we have lives lost because it's important to write down your lessons learned. It's more important to read them later and have other people read them. It's a good experience just for yourself to help understand some of the things you might have just learned post an event. But it's extremely important that you start getting others involved. Have them read your lessons learned, and you go ahead and read their lessons learned. So that's one major story. The next one I'd like to give you is whenever I was working for another Defense Department organization, I used to go out into the smoking area a lot, and I met a guy who could do TCP over UHF. So you've probably heard of TCP over IP. That's how we do most of our internet protocol, networking stuff for what you have at home and everywhere else. But this guy was doing UHF, the way that we used to do TV back in the 80s and earlier, where, you had rabbit ears and everything. And not VHF, but UHF. And he was the only person that they had who could do it. And a year and a half before he retired, he let everyone know, hey guys, I'm the only one you got, and I'm about to retire. And then he kept reminding them month after month after month after month. They never backfilled him or had him cross train anybody. And as soon as the day before came for him to go home and never come back to work again, they said, we'll hire you back as a contractor for $300,000 a year. And he said no. So I don't know how much that hurt, but whenever you're talking about mountainous areas of Afghanistan, there aren't a lot of people who could do wireless networking over UHF without him anymore. So those are two little vignettes. And just want to highlight that the last 2 years have seen some major issues. We've had the Great Reset or Great Resignation, where you have a whole lot of people who have left their jobs. And with everyone who walked out the door, walked away with intellectual property. The issue that I've always had with knowledge management is that they say, there's tacit and, the knowledge that's easily shared, it's written down or whatever, and then the knowledge that's between one's ears. And I've always said that knowledge can only exist in between your ears, because I can't make other people understand it. Because there's the knowledge that you can get of, reading a book or watching a video, but until you actually get on a bicycle and try to ride it, you don't know how to ride a bike, no matter how many videos you watch on how to do it. So, want to talk about how we need to capture knowledge that people have today so that before they leave your organization due to retirement, because all the baby boomers are going to retire, or because they found a better job offer, we got to do something to make certain that all of the intellectual property doesn't just walk out the door. So at this time, if anyone's got anything they'd love to share about this particular topic, I'd love it if you could go ahead and chime in.
Yeah, I'll say this. So my daughter's boyfriend got hired right out of college. He's a data analysis guy, and he works for a major defense contracting company for knowledge management on their knowledge management team as part of the huge effort to collect the knowledge and store it of all the engineers from the Cold War that are retiring soon. And you can file all of the documentation you want, all the drawings, all the diagrams, all the specs, but they're trying to their team's brief, their charter is to sort of get at that magic process of how did you guys come up with some of this stuff? How did you work together? How did you know to put all these disciplines together? So, and that's a major effort by that company, and he's participating in that. So it's a pretty interesting job for him.
And you, sir?
One of the things that I work with is lessons learned. In fact, I've I've got software to actually specifically handle lessons learned. And I've done a lot of work with emergency services in Australia, and particularly fire services. One of the things that we found in the 1920 year bushfires was previous lessons which were unlearned. So we'd learnt the lesson. We had actually changed all the explicit knowledge, the standard procedure, all of the training had been changed. But what happened in many of those cases was that all of the people had moved on. So we'd actually lost the tacit knowledge that went along with it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best way to summarise that was something I saw in the report on the Capitol riots in the US. And the statement was made that the FBI did not know what the FBI knew. And that is a major problem. And it's where your federated searching and the enticement to search has to be put up front. So I'll put that forward as a sort of corollary to what we're going to talk about today, which is largely about using SharePoint, I think, to maintain explicit knowledge, but there's a whole lot of tacit knowledge goes with it. Now, your Securities and Exchange Commission has said that all reporting companies will report on human capital. And so ISO has developed a standard for that, 30414. And that's got an interesting little set. I'll just give this to you. Just one of the questions: what percentage of your current positions were filled by planned succession? Getting back to your expert. And then what percentage of your positions will be filled by planned succession in the next 3 to 5 years? So they're actually in the standard as metrics. And I think that sort of thing needs to go along with what we are doing as basically technicians.
I want to look up the ISO on that. That sounds very interesting because I don't think that there are a lot of people who plan for succession, that they plan for in case poop happens. If someone leaves, we have these procedures to re-advertise the position and stuff, but they don't always know whenever they need to hire somebody new. You might know if you got someone coming up for retirement, but we aren't in a job market anymore where people join and stay for 30 years and retire. People jump ship every 2, 3, 4 years in many industries. So I'd like to learn a little bit about that. So I'm going to look up the ISO. I appreciate your feedback. The thing of what I wanted to discuss today with doing KM. So Microsoft 365 comes with a whole lot of options, not just SharePoint. We're using Teams right now. And so what I love about SharePoint 1 or M365 in general is search. The ability in our conversations and the persistent chat that remains, being able to search through that. I love that capability. Love being able to hit save. Love being able to go back through that. What I have not been able to use very well in the last few years based on clients that I've had is Yammer. And whenever I was with Booz Allen Hamilton years ago, we had, I think 25,000 people or so inside the company. We have people all around the globe. And we had about 400 or so really active SharePoint people working for Booz, and we were all on Yammer. So we might have, only a handful of people per client, but whenever I had a SharePoint issue, I could go to Yammer and ask the question, hey, does anyone know how to do X, Y, or Z? And that reach back capability through Yammer was awesome. It's one thing to be able to have groups like this where every once in a while we can get together. Obviously, if your network on LinkedIn is wonderful, you can post questions and get feedback on Twitter. You can kind of do that. #SP help if anyone's still following that one for SharePoint. So it's nice to be able to do that reach back, and I loved it with Yammer. If you do not actively use Yammer for your communities of practice, I suggest you take a look at it. Unfortunately, for a lot of my clients, Yammer just wasn't available because of working on classified networks and whatnot. Yammer's not available. So we have communities of practice, communities of interest on SharePoint, and I have always altered these just a little bit anywhere where I've implemented them in order to create a library just for different articles of things that I would learn, or I might have already known it. I just never had it captured. So someone would email, help desk or, whatever, and it'd come to me and they're like, how do I do XYZ? Rather than just email, back a response, I would draft up a proper article, screenshots, everything, and I would publish it, and then I would send them the link to it. The initial response time on this is obviously going to grow, right? I could just email them, said blah, 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 or talk to them over the phone. But by doing the article, now I give that answer to everyone else. I've captured that knowledge, and everyone who comes behind me can benefit. I really think that it's very important that we do stuff like that. But I'd say that with the client that I have now, it's a lot easier for me to record my screen and make little learning videos. And so that's what I've been doing a lot of in the last few years is whenever someone's like, hey, how do I do this? I start recording my screen with Camtasia. I walk through the entire process with the voiceover. I save it. I publish that to the community of practice, and then I send them the link to the video. And that way, that is shared. The way that the future is going with knowledge management, I really, really, really hope that people do not just write articles because it can take so long, especially as slow as some people might type or the way that they, write. If they can just record their screen and talk it through. Hey, what's your process for doing this? You do it. And the way that Microsoft Stream is working, in order to capture all the videos and stuff, it's a wonderful feature. So if you don't record yourself right now, I'd suggest that you try to find ways to do that. If I don't know, Joe, are you able to record your screen and voice on the high side on your classified
No.
network?
So I mean, I
didn't
could
think so.
record. So, you mentioned Camtasia. I just wanted to put out PowerPoint also
Exactly.
does screen recording. So you can
Yeah.
use if you've got PowerPoint 2019 or up.
Yeah.
You can do screen recording. Voice is the problem on the work side.
Yeah. That's what I was afraid of.
Yep. But there are ways around that, and we'll be trying to do some of that.
But you do VTCs and stuff on the high side, so people have headsets, right?
No, it goes through the
Not
VoIP
really.
phones.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Damn
Yeah. Microphones.
Yeah.
Open mic.
Yeah, they don't like that.
No. So.
But on the unclass from home, whenever you get to do the telework, you can do that now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's obviously going to be a lot more difficult for you to jump around through some of these things. But I think that it's still entirely possible, even on the high side.
Yeah.
You're able to record your screen going through the stuff, and you can just add text boxes on the screen to say, this is why we're doing this is why we're doing that, and I think that might be
something
an
to look
option.
into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
NASA, as
Can
I
I chime
understand
in
it,
on that?
NASA doesn't take minutes of any meetings. They just take a video, and then
Mhm.
they're using a voice to text tool,
Yep.
which means that all meetings are searchable.
Yep. And Microsoft Teams can do that. And in fact, it can translate in real time to other languages, and it's absolutely wicked cool.
Yes.
My wife is originally from Korea, and I was looking at a slide deck that someone else was presenting live, and I just changed the language on it, and bam, just like that, it changed it all to Korean, and it was accurate, which was just phenomenal because, we've looked at translations before, and things don't always translate well.
Yeah. Machine
Um,
translation's come a long way since
yeah,
Google got involved.
yeah,
But yeah.
but for accessibility features, Microsoft Teams will do the transcripts real time, and then you can also just download it after a session, and that's been really wonderful because people can then obviously search through the transcripts, and I absolutely love that capability.
Unless, of course, your global admins decide that that is a feature they want turned off.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Um,
So can I chime in on that one?
please,
Because I, I
Please do.
I'm from the L&D field background after I came out of IT. I would say Snagit is also helpful. The cost on that is
Mhm.
really not expensive, and they also have tutorials that they're always available in the application and how to do things. So it's not complicated, and I 100 agree with you, Scott, that we have to couple or have a hybrid approach to how we share knowledge, not just one way or the other. And sometimes it is faster just to do a quick video. You don't even sometimes have to talk. You can just actually show them how to do it, and people can pick up on the steps and pause. So I'm 100% for that one, working towards that. So good points.
Yeah. One of the things I love the most about YouTube Premium is that I don't have any advertisements. And I have gone through so many tutorial videos where I haven't even forgotten that I leave it on at like 1.5 speed, and I can go through so much more and learn so much more. People are talking really, really fast, but I can
Yeah.
go through a lot more, and it's just a wonderful thing. But I try to, if I'm making a video intentionally for someone else, I try to slow down my speech just so it helps others catch up. And if they can go through and speed it up, by all means they can. But I'd rather by default slow everything down so that they understand. And obviously, whenever you go click on some things, it might take 10 seconds for the screen to, you know, render the page, and so that gives you a little bit of time to fill in some gaps as well. But then whenever you have like really, really long pieces, if you're using applications like Camtasia or what I use on this computer here, DaVinci Resolve, you can, grab a section of time and accelerate it, at 10 times speed. And so it'll just, and it just goes through because that it's going to take a half an hour to install this. So you just accelerate through. And I like doing the acceleration rather than break and then snip it and cut out that middle piece. So it just helps people understand that there's the weight. It's not just chop chop.
Yeah.
Um,
I will
something.
say, oh,
Go ahead.
no. So, my former life was a training specialist. So one of the things we learned how to do was I took classes on is how to do, we call them screencasts
Mhm.
in the training world. But just some tips that I learned there but apply here 100%. Try to keep it about 3 to 5 minutes
Mhm.
if you can. That's YouTube is great, but it's really given us an attention span problem. 3 to 5 minutes. If you can, take a minute, take a few minutes, jot down the order of what you're going to do. You don't have to do a full script, but try to do it and practice at least once
Yeah.
before you make that video. That will really help. And again, PowerPoint has presentation coach now. So practice with PowerPoint presentation coach, even if you don't have slides, and that will give you feedback on your style of presentation, including the pace of your words, which, as you said, try to slow down, especially if you're like me from the Northeast, we talk fast. So
Mhm.
just wanted to throw those out there.
And depending on your industry, it might be easier to do certain things. We all use a really fascinating technology these days. If you go onto Snapchat, and that is augmented reality, something that my wife has been asked to do because she teaches Korean for a living to an agency nearby, um, is an augmented reality teaching. So what they're doing is not exactly, full VR, but if you go to like Google Maps now, or you have all these different apps on your phone where you can, see how this chair will look in your office and things like that. Well, they're doing augmented reality in order to improve learning. And the coolest video that I saw about this was they were putting goggles on guys, having them do work at a nuclear power plant and recording it so that then they can teach everyone else how to do those particular procedures with a virtual wrench or whatever they might be using, whatever tools they're using, and it will tell them, now do this, now do that. And as a way of training somebody, I don't doubt that in 10, 15 years, every mechanic that's working on a car, because of how specialized and technical these things are going to be, they're just going to play that piece of how to and just follow along, and it's going to make their training very, very fast because of all the different makes and models of every vehicle that's out there. I think that might just be how it's going to get done, for anything that's complex. So if you have the ability with what you're doing to do any kind of augmented reality work, I think that that's important. Um, uh, Apple has done a lot with augmented reality, so much so that it's upsetting Facebook. Um, so even though I don't like Apple, I'm happy that they're upsetting Facebook. Um, but I think that if we look at augmented reality instead of virtual reality, you're going to have a lot of options to um, do a lot of training, and that's really what knowledge management is all about. It's having a learning environment, a learning organization where everyone is constantly learning. It's not just come in, go through the motions and punch out at the end of the day. You have to constantly learn so that we can improve efficiencies and everything else. And I think that when you start to cross train people because you've recorded your steps, someone else is going to see that and they're going to be like, don't you know that you can do it like this? And then you spread that knowledge and everyone gets better. So I want people to look at that. Um, and lastly, in the time that we have left, has anyone on this call heard of Microsoft Syntex yet? SharePoint Syntex?
I've not.
Nobody? Nobody.
Yes.
Okay, you have. Okay. So here's a wicked cool thing that they are doing specifically for knowledge management. They are going through, and because of how they have improved search and whatnot, you can get through Azure Active Directory a role for knowledge administrator or knowledge manager. And you can create a content center as a specialized site, and it will start to crawl through everything that is 365, not just SharePoint, and it will find topics of knowledge. And it will then make suggestions, and those knowledge managers must go through there and approve those suggestions. And once they have approved those suggestions, people start getting information about that in their feeds, even if they're not subscribed to it, because they have done a particular search in the past, whatever. It knows what you want to know. It can also identify certain kinds of documents. So even if they haven't been tagged to say that this is a project plan, it's going to search enough to identify this is a project plan, this is a risk management plan, this is a wiring diagram, whatever it happens to be, because the artificial intelligence is getting that good. The license for this is like another $5 a month per user that's going to go into that knowledge manager or knowledge administrator role. That's chump change when you look at it. For a large organization, if you got a dozen people who end up with that, that's what, another $60 a month. Ooh, that's really cheap. And I personally, I'm going to be looking a lot more into this. I do believe that we need to get our organizations to crawl, then walk, then run. So there's a lot to go on first. My particular client does not have a knowledge management office. They don't have anyone who's really, really pushing it. My boss would like to. And I have learned that someone in the organization used to be the chief knowledge officer of another organization, and it looks like she's trying to promote this. So that's really, really good. I don't know about y'all, your organizations. Do you work for an organization that actually has a knowledge management program that's going on, an actual knowledge management office or knowledge management officer? That's a CKO position. Anybody?
No.
I know.
Everything's in their inboxes.
Yep. A lot of people try to manage things in their inbox, and that's I have in my signature block on my work email. Email is where knowledge goes to die. A little history lesson. Do you know how much scientific data was done in the 1980s on Amigas and Commodores? A whole lot. And it was all lost in a digital black hole when they finally moved to PCs. They might have had printouts, of their data, but they couldn't just put that all back into a PC when they all moved over from using a Commodore or an Amiga. And the digital black holes that exist because of the way that we permission certain things off, or our email, where you leave and the conversation on a decision that's being made is only stored in email. And that's a very horrifying thing, because unless it's e-discovered because of a legal thing, no one's going to go look through your email after you leave an organization. This is why I prefer that we have most of our conversations through Teams official stuff. You can go out and put it into an email. But I try to keep email out of the loop. I like to be able to forward email to Microsoft Teams so that people can have it for the group. So I don't know. Does anyone have any stories of success that they might be able to share of how they have used this platform effectively, or any other platform for that matter, to say, look, we're doing it this way and it's really helped?
Yes.
Please, Joe.
No. Right. So Scott set up a community of practice for SharePoint at where we used to work. And when he left, I and somebody else, we took it over and helped moderate it and stuff. And the evidence is there. Whenever Scott would come up with something, he'd make an article or a discussion post or something about it and tag it and categorize it and everything like that. And it has grown and grown and grown. People still use it to this day. I use it. I publish on it constantly, almost to the point where I'm like, maybe I shouldn't. But I found these guidelines to help me work. So whenever I do a project, do a task, anything like that, and I figure something out that might help somebody else. Well, I'm always documenting my stuff for myself anyway. And I always try to, right, you always want to document your work for 3 things, right? You want to document it for the site, the client, the customer, the tool itself, whatever you've made. So it's there in case somebody has to follow behind you and fix it or figure out what you did. You want to do it for yourself because I guarantee you, if you have to come back to it 6 months, 3 months, 9 months later, you will have forgotten why did I do it this way? Oh, all right, okay. Or what's the name of the whatever variable I did? Okay, so you do it for the customer, you do it for yourself, and then you do it for others. Take that same documentation, twist the pronouns around in it, change it to active voice or whatever, and publish it as an article somewhere. And it just keeps going. So
Yeah.
And so we took and then that community of practice too has also inspired. I don't know if you may not remember this or know this, but I mean it's inspired the creation of other communities of practice for SharePoint at other agencies.
Mm-hmm.
They participated in ours, and then they went off and then they retreated and made it for themselves. So that's a good thing. And then it inspired us to do the same thing for when all the government clouds came in and COVID came in and we all moved to the government clouds because we were all home. We started up one for Microsoft 365 on Teams, on a Microsoft 365. And I was sort of shocked, pleasantly surprised, more along those lines. So we would hold a meeting every week, try to come up with a presentation every week, kind of laid out, didn't even try to make it too strenuous. Like we just laid out an agenda and sort of built on the previous week and kept moving and kept going forward until they turned off the recordings. But when it was all so for 4 months when we first started, we could do that. And then we'd go through and we'd add a page for each meeting. And this is what we talked about. These are some links to some other things. When it was all said and done, there's like 40 pages of and from start to finish, like here's how to get started with Microsoft 365 to here's some advanced concepts now. And I had to show Randall. Actually, he was like, what's this stuff? I was like, oh my gosh, you need to catch up. And it was there. And when I went looking to catch him up, that little bit, that 1 hour a week, just like clockwork, had turned into a massive library of resources.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much, but it does take steady. So I encourage everybody to get out there and just do it bit by bit.
A lot of the documentation that I do, I started mainly because I didn't want whoever came in behind me to say, oh, he didn't know what he was doing, and it doesn't look right. Because I've seen people do that, where they will say, the last guy did it all kinds of wrong, and so we need to recreate it. And it wasn't necessarily that they did it wrong. It was that the person who came in behind them didn't understand. And it was just better for me to document this is why everything is the way that it is. And I love that in Power Automate, you can comment on every little step. And I like that inside of, SharePoint, you can create another library just to store documentation about the site and what you've built and why. And I typically do that. Whenever it's all classic UI, I would create a little wiki just for site documentation on what my permission architecture was supposed to be, so that whenever someone broke it, it would be easier to put back to how it was supposed to be. You know, what all of my content types were and how they related to other content types, so that if I knew that the same column was used in multiple content types, how I could use that. So I liked having all that stored so that anyone coming behind me would never be able to say that Scott didn't know what he was doing.
Scott, on that topic, having done an awful lot of modifying other people's code, when I look at the documentation, it sort of tells me what they thought they did. What I want to know is why they didn't do it another way. Because by the time I come along, things could have changed, and that's now a viable option. On your other subject of stopping using email, I know of one knowledge manager who very simply took away the ability for Outlook to have email groups at all. Just took it away. And that forced people or encouraged people to use the proper tool when you're putting something out to a number of people.
So by groups, are we talking like M365 groups? Or are we talking about distribution lists or?
Well, email groups within Outlook at that time.
Oh,
just took it away.
Interesting. Because I mean, as long as it went to an actual like group email box that like hundreds of people could access, I don't know if I would see that as necessarily a bad thing. Though I do just I like it being in chat
using
for
Teams. That's different. But this was back in the days of she had SharePoint and she had Outlook.
Got it. Yeah. What was it you were talking about right before that? The commenting on codes and stuff. There was something that I did. Wow. I'm guessing around 2011, 2012, whenever I was doing a knowledge management community of practice at a government organization. And one of the sessions I did was about what's called a decision tree. And it was just about lining up a document to say, these are all of our different possible courses of action, pros and cons, and why we decided to go with this. And I really don't understand why more people don't just write that kind of stuff down and create these so that whenever it's time to make an actual decision, they just, line, these were the different courses of actions that we thought we could do. This is the one that we decided and why. And
hey Scott, Joe keeps trying to get back in. He's stuck in the lobby.
Oh no.
He needs you to let him in. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I don't mind. Where's my lobby?
He got back out now, so he's probably. Let's just kind of watch it. That's all.
Oh, he's back. Joe.
No, I don't see him.
It says he's stuck in lobby limbo.
Yeah.
That's weird. I don't want to share that. Where am I? It's so weird.
Well, just thought I'd let you know.
Linux is not updated Teams so that I can actually see all of my meeting participants. And this is annoying. Nope.
Yeah, just on the topic you were just discussing about documenting everything. That's what I've been doing for myself. I feel like every project that I've done, especially the more complicated it's been, like just documenting it so I don't have to recreate the wheel every time. And it's been a huge help for me.
Yeah. So you've been doing a lot of documentation. And
yeah,
you know what's funny? Everyone who goes into a new organization, new job, they're like, why didn't they ever, no one gave me this training and no one's given me this, that, and the other thing. And then they don't ever capture what they were missing for the next person. And it just drives me nuts whenever people they say the same thing. Organization, hey, I wish that this had been provided when I started. But then they never take the effort to record what they learned so that it would be available for the next guy. And it just, I don't
Yeah,
know,
I was going to say,
culturally, there has to be a change.
I think for me, because especially some things I'm doing now, I'm capturing that feeling and using it as a buy-in for why we need to document and
Yeah.
more people to be involved. Like nobody hates not being able to find something when you need it. When you spend 15 minutes looking, 20 minutes looking for your car keys and they were sitting right there on the counter and you just look past it, somebody should have just told you it's right there. It's just a simple example such as that for some reason is causing the light bulbs to go off for people to understand the value. Just thought I'd share that. And just kind of really thinking beyond just the moment, thinking futuristically. If you have to come back to this, do you want to spend 3 hours looking for it in an email, or would you rather know you put it in a place that's consistent? Just think about that. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, it's funny that you raised the issue of car keys because last night I wasn't feeling very well and I fell asleep on the couch. And my keys were in my pocket and the keys fell into the couch. I could not find my car keys this morning. I looked under the cushions, but apparently I just didn't look quite right. And so I had to walk my daughter to school, almost
Uh-oh.
run, in order to get her to school on time, and then walk back. And at least I got half my steps in for the day. But my wife and I spent almost an hour at lunch looking for my damn keys. And I'd gone over that same place in the couch 3 other times, but I finally found it. And it was just, you know, you go back over where you think something should be
Mhm.
over and over, and you still can't see it staring you at the face.
Mhm.
It, I think that we have to get into. Whenever I was with the director of national intelligence a long time ago, I was there whenever Director McConnell had said that there is a paradigm shift from I'm paraphrasing here, a need to know to a responsibility to provide. And that was, because of all the walls up between the different agencies and they weren't sharing intel and all that. But I think that this goes down to a fundamental level within our own organizations. You will meet many, many people in your own organization who hoard knowledge and never share it because they have this false perception that it gives them job security. It doesn't. What it does is it prevents them from being promoted to a higher position. But the person who does share that information, the knowledge that they have in their head, they are seen as the thought leader in the organization. And I have gone into SharePoint search and I will tell people, you are not the thought leader you think you are. And they're like, but I run this. And I'm like, search for your name. And, you know, they'll find their name and they can see some of the stuff. But then I go, okay, now search on this topic where they think that they are the thought leader. And they aren't one of the people who come up. And so it was a funny conversation. I had I had people at this current office. We have 110,000 employees, and I searched for in Delve knowledge management. I didn't put quotes around it, and so I had 5 people come up, and it was really knowledge and management, completely different things, not knowledge management together. But then whenever I did a search on knowledge management in quotes, it was 2 people who came up, me and a lady who had just joined recently who had been the former chief knowledge officer of another organization. So when you're looking for knowledge in an organization, Delve is one of the best things that Microsoft 365 has going for it. People need to list what they have expertise in, those different subject areas, because whenever you want to know something about something, you find the right person, because you can sit and find, the first 3 pages that come up in search and read every document that's out there. You might not find what you're looking for. But if you can find the subject matter expert who should already have that knowledge, it's a wonderful thing. If you can find, if people put down all the technologies that they've worked on, even if it was years ago for another job, and you're like, hey, we're looking at bringing this into our environment. Does anyone have any experience with it? Well, you can search for it, and you can find that these two jokers over on the West Coast have experience. And you can call them up and say, hey, what are your feelings on this? Pros and cons. How did it work in this environment? Did you have issues making it work behind our firewall and this, that, and the other thing? And I'll tell you, finding the experts is a very important thing. One of the Army organizations I'd worked for briefly, we didn't have Delve because it was a separate SharePoint farm, on that network. But I'd created a list where we had captured quite a lot of information on people, and I was capturing languages and whatnot, so that if they needed somebody who knew more than one language and they needed them to serve in a certain area, we could search for different skill sets to assemble the right people to go on a deployment. And I think that it's very, very important for these organizations to really use Delve if you're not using Delve. And if you can't use Delve because of, your situation, like if it's on a classified network, at least start creating a very large list that captures all kinds of information on people so that you can get those, the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they might have all tied together. Within a lot of companies, when we have, um, done proposals for other work, I had a very large library of content for past performance. So whenever we put in activity reports, we would capture, certain paragraphs and, things, so that whenever we were looking to do a proposal for another client, we could say, look, who's done a center of excellence. What's our past performance on doing centers of excellence, and we could search through all of these activity reports that we've put in and see, well, this month and year, Scott did this month and year Joe did this, whatever, and we could put that in as past performance for our proposal efforts. It's a lot easier in that company because it's a lot smaller, but I'm just saying I think it's very important that we start capturing the knowledge around our people, not just searching documents. So I covered the cops. I wanted to talk about Yammer a little bit. So if you haven't, please look into using Yammer for your environment if you can. And then Syntax. There are a couple videos out there on YouTube. I really didn't feel like I was a subject matter expert to talk about Syntax yet. But that's definitely something I want to explore in the future, and maybe in a couple months, get someone else to talk about Syntax and how they have deployed it within their organizations. Does anyone have anything else they'd like to share with the group before we cut off the recording?
I did put a few links about to Microsoft about Syntax, so in the chat.
You dropped some links in there?
Yep.
Okay, cool. I can grab those and drop those into the description of the YouTube video whenever I post it.
Yeah.
Does anyone else? Please go ahead, Jenna.
Yeah, so I actually just had a question, and not to spur a whole new topic discussion, but if you can quickly, what is your thought on using the new Loop workspace and Pages as a place to store some of that content? I mean, is that meant to be transient or is that meant to be a repository?
I cannot say from a position of authority whether or not it's a good thing, bad thing, or how that's going to be. In my environment, I cannot use Loop yet. I am very eager to see it come to my environment, to see what we can do with it. But I don't have any firsthand experience, so I don't want to say one way or another. But it looks very cool.
Yeah.
I like the ability to, just use that same piece of, content regardless of platform. If it's SharePoint, if it's Teams, if it's anything else, I think that that's wicked cool. I like being able to throw that kind of stuff right into my Outlook. It's just wicked cool.
And I was originally really excited about the same thing, and I dug into the documentation a little bit more, and basically any loops, or right now the only thing we can do is do the loop live components in Teams chat. And all that gets stored in your OneDrive. So if you're trying to create a repository, you leave the company, everything you compile goes with you. And so I was really disappointed in that. I wasn't sure if workspaces are going to handle the same way, and it's just right now your chats get jumped in OneDrive, or if the workspaces and the pages might get tied to your team or to the SharePoint site and be more permanent.
I'm not certain. Like there are a lot of things with GCC. Are you on GCC?
No, we're on commercial.
Okay. On GCC, there are a lot of weird quirks of things that you would expect to be available. They just aren't. Okay. So, like on commercial, if you do a form, you can connect it to a Microsoft group. We can't.
Yes.
The forms aren't available. So the form web part isn't available in SharePoint. It's just a lot of little things like that. And it just drives me nuts because I'm like, I know how to do this, and then it's not available. And I'm like, did I forget? Did Microsoft move it? Did because they put out updates every other week? And it's just that in my particular environment, they have not pushed this yet. And so it's really infuriating because it's like, this has been available for years. Why isn't it available here? So I'm just, I don't know how long it's going to take before I can have Loop in my environment. And by the time I get it to in my environment, how much of it's going to change in commercial? I don't know.
Fair enough.
I think what I saw, so I looked a lot at Loop at the last Ignite because it was like, then that was the big announcement was Loop and Viva. And I've seen some stuff on Viva. So I think Loop is the transient, right? It's in your OneDrive, and it's that shared between OneDrives. It's like shared files in OneDrives going around. So Loop, I think, is meant to be your transient product, and Viva with its topics that it's borrowing from Syntec is going, and Delve, like whatever they did for Delve is now being merged, is pushed into Viva and Viva topics and Viva connections. So I think if you're looking for the corporate knowledge brain, it's going to be found in Viva in the future.
Okay, interesting. That's a good point. I hadn't thought about Viva.
Yeah, well, in GCC,
it's
my
theoretical
Viva,
for me. I'm on DoD, so
yeah. I know that my Viva
Forms?
says that
What's
I have a
forms?
lot more free time than I really do, because it'll say that I haven't had a meeting in 3 weeks, and I'm looking at my calendar. I'm like, no, I've had a lot more meetings than 3 in the last 3 weeks, and so I don't know if there's something misconfigured in my environment where we don't let it talk properly, but for whatever reason, it's not capturing the information correctly in Viva. So I haven't even put any, governance around it yet, other than, we don't want supervisors to hold it against anybody if it says that you're not doing stuff, because it doesn't look like it's presenting the data about people correctly. So that has me a little bit worried right now. if anyone else has anything they'd like to share, I'd love to know more. I'm glad to see that you're in here, Ian, because of NOCO. I've followed so much stuff on their blog. I'd like to share some links out with the unit, with the group here. If if you aren't following APQC, follow APQC. If you haven't joined KMI's group on LinkedIn, I'd suggest joining KMI's group on LinkedIn. And I believe his name is John Howell. He does a monthly meetup, just talking KM issues. It's a good group to jump in on sometimes. So if you want, I can get
found
that.
this meeting through John Howe.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, he's got a great group that I've jumped onto on Meetup a few times. So if you haven't, I'd look on Meetup for that. So if anyone wants, drop your email into the chat and I can send you some links for that. And if we aren't connected already on LinkedIn, please go ahead and connect. I think that the networking capabilities of LinkedIn is just a wonderful thing. Being able to find subject matter experts and people you can talk to about, highbrow things rather than what you find on Facebook. It's a wonderful thing. But unless anyone else has anything to add, I am going to hit stop recording. Going once, going twice.